Hello everyone, and welcome to Deconstructing Politics. I am your host, Elijah Kinnear.
And I'm Tommy Mulcairns.
And it is in the news that 90% of people want their news told by Gen Z.
I don't think that's true at all.
I think it's true. I think it's true.
true.
When they get 20-somethings talking about the news, it's great. So the first item in the news today, recently, was the Trump guilty verdict. The new update in the witch hunt, as he likes to call it. All 34 counts guilty, many of those felony charges. And the reaction from Republicans has been very funny, very funny. You know, the people that were chanting "lock her up" at all those rallies and everything are suddenly upset when we get actual, justice on corruption.
Yeah, they don't love going against political opponents, apparently. This is news to me.
Yeah, I don't suddenly it's like, oh no, you can't do that. And then some of them were like, I saw this, were like, oh, we never said that. And they'll play clips of Trump being like, yeah, lock her up. Lock up Hillary Clinton.
No, I mean, I think that they just make up their own reality. It doesn't matter what they said. It doesn't matter if it's on tape. I mean, their president literally just got convicted by a jury of his peers, undeniably, and they are just making up that it didn't happen and that it's just all political.
Yeah, no, and it's like, oh, this is a show trial, and then a bunch of them are like, we're in Soviet Russia, this is so dictatorial. The dude was like bribing a porn star. Like, how clear cut of corruption could this be? It's not that hard.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, again, they have no interest in the truth. They don't care. It was proven for people who were following the trial. There's no question that he absolutely did that, and he's not even denying it. He's just saying it's not a crime.
Yeah. Oh, definitely not a crime. Not multiple counts of corruption. Definitely not a crime. I think it's really interesting because this is the first former president to be charged with any crimes, even though we know that many more should have been. And now it's looking like, I think some people were talking about, if they go for prison sentences, he would be in prison during the Republican National Convention. Although
I think the chance of him going to prison is incredibly low. I think more likely than not he's going to get fined. It would be awesome though if they threw him in jail for 138 years or whatever he was saying was going to be the outcome.
Oh, could you imagine just Trump in an orange jumpsuit doing a Zoom call during the Republican National Convention? It's fine. I got the delicious jailhouse food, the best food even.
I think he would kind of kill it in jail, to be honest. I think people would like him.
Yeah, no, they'd be all over that shtick. And then the other major news item currently...
Wait, I'm sorry, really quick. Before we move on, I wanted to highlight some of the conservative responses. Yeah. So Jessica McBride, who we've talked about before, she's a UWM professor and also runs the right-wing news site Wisconsin Right Now, posted on her Facebook, went to bed angry, woke up angry. And one of the comments began calling for civil war, because Donald Trump got convicted on 34 counts. It is awesome to me that these people are so invested in this man that they are willing to go to civil war over him getting convicted for paying off a porn star.
That's absolutely crazy. Civil war over paying off a porn star is already wild. I love the wording of that tweet because went to bed angry, woke up early. That sounds like me when I have a bad date. That's a hilarious reaction.
More proof that conservatives are just drama nerds. They are theater kids. They are so over the top.
Absolutely. And with that, you wanna jump on that Biden immigration policy?
Sure. So Biden, in his latest attempt to lose the election, passed an immigration bill. So the measure, according to the New York Times, is the most restrictive border policy instituted by Mr. Biden or any other modern Democrat, and echoes an effort in 2018 by President Donald Trump to cut off migration that was blocked in federal court. That's a quote from the New York Times. So what he did was he issued an executive order on Tuesday that prevents migrants from seeking asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border. And this is basically adopting the same policy that Trump was going for in 2018. Biden's strategy here is to become Donald Trump 2.0.
Yeah, essentially, it's such a major U-turn. I mean, if we went back, 10 years, 5 years, you got the Democrats all up in arms about immigration, all being like, oh, we support, immigration, we support asylum seekers, and bashing Trump for all that stuff. But suddenly now, with this immigration crisis, Biden's like, yeah, let's do a Trump policy. I think that's a good idea. Suddenly it's a massive U-turn.
Well, you have to wonder what their strategy is, right? Because they've been especially after the genocide in Gaza and the student encampments in Biden's position. He's been dropping in the polls among young voters, and he needs young voters. So you would assume that after all of this is happening, he's dropping in the polls. His strategy would be to then do something more progressive to try and win them back. Instead, he went the other route. I don't know what they're thinking, why they would at all go the same way as Donald Trump. Because when he ran in 2020, he ran on immigrants are human, and now he's like, I'm going to be the immigrant killer.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing U-turn. It's like just a complete change of messaging, and it seems like the Biden campaign's essential strategy is like, how can I be more evil? How can I, let's U-turn on everything and piss off the young voters that got me into power in the first place.
You have to wonder if he is just giving up, because by and large, young people do not turn out to vote, right? So you have to wonder if his strategy here is focusing more on registered voters and people who have already people who are more likely to vote, and those people are older and they tend to be a lot more reactionary and conservative. So I think he may be trying to appeal to them, but I don't think he understands how slim the margins are going to be in Wisconsin and Michigan. It's very bad idea and very bad strategy to just give up on young voters completely.
Yeah, no, I mean, young voters are going to be deciding both this election and, like we said, we decided the last one. So if you're going to lose those young voters, you're not going to get into office. It's going to be another Trump term and then all the consequences that entails.
Yeah, I just don't think that you can win enough of those like more high turnout demographics, like the older folks, and like I don't think you can win enough of them to make up for losing as much support among young people as he's losing. He really relies on them, and he just seems to have forgotten that.
Well, especially those like old moderate voters that are like, hey, is Ronnie Reagan still in office? I like what he did, cutting taxes. Is he still there?
And the thing is that they're not really moderate, right? Like they have some of the most insane takes. They just have a mix of insane takes. So like I forgot what poll it was, but a recent poll came out that showed that they're, especially among the older demographics, they support both deporting like 11 million people and also making like a path to citizenship easier. So like there is no coherent politics here. A lot of it is just whatever they've heard on the news, they will pick it up without any thought to, am I contradicting myself?
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I mean, we've seen this with a lot of center left parties everywhere. I mean, you can look at in Britain with the Labour leader Keir Starmer, who has U-turned on trans rights, welfare, all that sort of stuff. You're kind of seeing this everywhere, where the center left leaders are basically going, oh, we don't know what to do, so we might as well try to capture like moderate right wing voters, and it just doesn't work.
Well, I think this happens a lot, right? Is that whatever quote unquote left wing party, they're usually center right parties, exist in Western countries. They tend to form alliances or coalitions with the more left wing segment of the population. And I think what the left wing segment of the population needs to remember is that these people are not genuinely moving to the left. They will, as soon as it comes down to it, they will move back to the quote unquote middle voter and try to absolutely cut out any progress that's been made.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like after Bernie dropped out and like Biden like won the primary, it was all about like, oh, I'm the most progressive candidate in like the Democratic Party. Like I'm this old timey bureaucrat that's gonna steady hand all this progressive legislation. I'm the new LBJ, all that sort of stuff, and just completely all that's pretty much gone.
Right, and I mean, I think that maybe he's a little bit mad that a lot of, because he did do some more progressive stuff towards the beginning of his administration, and like there's no arguing Biden has passed the most progressive policies of any president. Maybe he's mad that people didn't really care, because when he passed a lot of those, we didn't really give him credit. But either way, I mean, it's because those are half measures, and I think what a lot of more center-right liberal Democrats need to understand is that half measures are not going to fly with Gen Z.
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. Like, we didn't celebrate it because it was like, here's this huge infrastructure deal with all this sort of stuff. It was like, okay, can I get my college debt removed? Can we have like free healthcare? Can we have all these things that like we've been talking about for years, but seemingly doesn't happen?
Well, okay, you want healthcare that's kind of selfish, Eli. We have children to bomb in Rafah.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. We got to bombing those children is more important than my medical bills. So yeah, sorry.
Speaking of bombing children, we have a representative here from the Madison YDSA who's here to speak about his experiences within the encampment and just talk about kind of compare and contrast, because me and Eli were both involved with the UW Milwaukee encampment, and not to be mean, Mark, but I think that no one disagrees that Milwaukee walked away with a better agreement. So we kind of want to know what were the internal dynamics in the encampment, what went wrong. So can you just kind of speak to how, as a camper, what your impression of the negotiations was, like how that process went down?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So, yes, this is a voice from Madison. Of course, technically, I have to say my opinion only implicates my own opinion, not the official position of any organizations or anyone else in the Madison area. But generally, as someone who has been following through and staying a lot of time in the encampment and knowing people in the negotiation team, I think I have a few things to say. So first of all, in generally, I want to confirm that the organizers of our Madison encampment had done their best. Really, they had done their best. Especially considering there's no such a large-scale operation happening before in Madison. There's no prior experience to learn from, and most of the organizations like DSA Madison and my DSA Madison are fairly new or recently reorganized. There are only so much things they can do. On that note, I have to say, inexperience, of course, was our first and foremost enemy in the entire course of action.
Well, and I think from what I understand from conversations, this is Mark Nee, by the way, conversations that me and Mark have had, is that you guys, like, our big strength in Milwaukee was that we had community support, right? We had a lot of the Palestinian community come out and support us. We had people making us food. And we had also organizational capacity that we'd built up over the years, right? Like, we had things from the Black Lives Matter protests that we were able to employ at this encampment. It seems like in Madison, there isn't any of that. You guys did not have any community support. And on top of that, you guys had a lot more Zionists. Like, we had almost no Zionist counter-protesters. It seems like you guys had a lot of problems with the Zionists. Can you speak to some of the Zionist counter-protests that happened and what that looked like for you?
Of course. But first of all, just in defense of the Madison community, we do have, I think, a fair amount of Madison community support to our encampment. Especially, there are lots of food being donated to the extent that we have to say, no, please do not donate any more food because we're never going to run out and they are just going to waste. And in the end, we actually donate a lot of excess food to local unhoused people and other organizations. And about the Zionists, yes, it's funny to say, but lots of Zionist counter-protesters come from the fraternities and sororities of...
Shocking.
Yeah, of course, shocking. Surprised to know. Of the Madison campus. And lots of them are not very committed, I have to say. What we observe is that there are a lot of Zionist counter-protesters coming here, especially during the day or earlier in the evening. But they are always pretty peaceful, I have to say, or like not harmful. And they tend to be gone after drinking hour start. So I say this is a good perk for us because in the late night where we were expecting the harshest conflict with counter-protesters or other groups, we saw none of them. In the late night, it was actually the most peaceful time in every day during encampment. Those Zionists, I think, they are more or less identity-based. Like, there are Jewish sororities and fraternities. There are Jewish religious organizations on campus. And to an extent, I do understand, to a certain extent, why many individuals in those organizations feel, like, uncomfortable when this entire encampment thing is happening, when we are protesting against the genocide and U.S. support in this genocide. But I can say I am very glad that everyone kept some sort of restraint and no one really got hurt.
Well, and I mean, sort of to that point, I definitely hear what you're saying. That, like, I can understand why a lot of them would feel scared, especially when a lot of the adults in their lives are telling them that, like, these encampments are anti-Semitic. They're all of these things. I think there's been, and we had the Palestinian Film Festival at our encampment, and the movie that we watched talked a lot about how there's been this concerted effort by Israel to tie, especially with college students through things like Birthright, to tie the idea of, like, your Jewish identity to Israel and its existence. So I think that a lot of these people really think that Zionism equals Judaism, and therefore any opposition to Zionism is anti-Semitism. But I think that a lot of that is disproved when you look at like the makeup of these campuses and the encampments and the organizations involved. Like we had Jewish Voices for Peace and a lot of other Jewish organizations. I learned more about the Jewish faith at the encampment than I did anywhere else in my life.
I just want to jump in real quick. I was interested. What did you see from the negotiation process? Like, how did that all go down, and how did the encampment feel about it, and the organizers on the ground feel about it?
To the extent that you feel comfortable speaking on that.
So, personally, I have to have a disclaimer first. Again, I am not part of the negotiation team. I was not involved in negotiations. So, what I am going to say here are all speculation based on the information I have right now. So we do know that there are faculty advisors, very potent faculty advisors from the UW Law School are aiding the negotiation process. We also know that there used to be a split of opinion between the organizers on the ground in the encampment and the opinion of those who are handling negotiation. Essentially, as you just said, right, we have a very bad deal, essentially, with UW-Madison Authority. And that's partially because the negotiation team want to concede to the what I would call the nominal concessions of the administration, whereas most of the organizers on the ground in the encampment are willing to stay a little bit longer and pressing for more gains. But in the end, the negotiation team, of course, make the call. That is one of the many reasons that I think we are suffering some sort of setbacks in the encampment, and definitely one thing we can improve in the future. And on the other note, there was this Zionist organization on the ground that I briefly interacted with. They are frustrated that the negotiation process is not inclusive to Zionists. And I was like, yeah, but I'm sure you have your own channels to talk with the UW administration, but the Zionists say no, they would like to be involved in those process, and they think it's very unfair and sort of anti-Semitic to be not included. To that extent, I say, yeah, whatever. It's just
well, Mark, I mean, to the point, I think that the administration is the Zionist perspective, right? Like, I think that the mainstream institutional perspective of like most of the people who are involved, at least on the UW Milwaukee side, is that, you know, pro-Zionism. Like, they've been raised up in the propaganda that everyone else has in America. Like, there's been a very, again, concerted effort to talk about Zionism and not at all talk about the Palestinian plight.
Yes.
So I think like they were represented in the very fact that we were protesting was proof that they weren't just represented, they were the majority. They had everything that they wanted.
They are the norm. Yes.
Right.
And I think you are onto something here, because you are saying that Zionism here is actually not about what Jewish people have suffered or what the Jewish people are demanding, because we saw a lot of Jewish people are not demanding Israel atrocity against Palestinians, right? It's unimaginable. As a people, they suffered a lot of atrocities on other people's hands. It's unimaginable they would actually demand atrocity by themselves. But I think Zionism, when we talk about here in this context today, is really about white American or white Western psyche. Like, you can also see this in Germany. Germans' unconditional support of Israel's atrocity, war crimes in Gaza. It's not about how Germans love Israel as a state or love Jews as a people. It's about Germany want to redeem their psyche, redeem their atrocities, their genocide during World War II. And I think more or less in America, especially among more conservative members of the society, it's more or less the same. They don't want to appear anti-Semitic, so they use Zionism as a symbol. They practice and perform all the sort of activities that the symbol demands, and therefore they can comfortably sit back and say, we are not anti-Semitic, even though a few days ago they are probably retweeting anti-Semitic Jewish conspiracy theory, like a Jewish space laser or something.
Right. Well, and that was, maybe you can speak more to this, but so my first point is that Germany needs to get their game up on not supporting genocide. I mean, they're 2 for 2 right now. They're not doing great.
They got a bad track record with that, don't they?
They really do. I mean, they just, whenever there's a genocide, they happen to support it. They can't seem to figure that one out. If I had to tip for Germany, it would be when civilians are being genocided, stand against it. And Mark, to that last point that you made about Israelis, or about the Israeli being like the Western perspective, I think that's, or about the the counter protesters, the Zionists, were not the people who were coming out and protesting anti-Semitism, right? Like the people who were protesting anti-Semitism when you guys had the Nazis walking through the state capitol was the people who were in the encampment. We've done more, I think, at least in like the leftist spaces for fighting against anti-Semitism, like real anti-Semitism, like white supremacy, than any of those Zionist protesters that I saw, at least.
Exactly.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Mark, for coming on, telling us about the Madison perspective. All of us here in Milwaukee were super interested about it, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that moves into, we are trying to, at the UWM Palestine Coalition for Palestine, UWM Coalition for Palestine, we are trying to keep up the pressure from the encampment. So we engaged in an action yesterday. Eli, do you want to give a bit of a brief overview of it?
Actually, I was at work during that time. I was a bad activist, and I couldn't even come. But if I heard correctly, a bunch of you in the coalition went to the Board of Regents meeting, where it's the Board of Regents of the UW system. We're meeting in Milwaukee, and to kind of like protest. It was like a finance meeting, yeah.
It was UWM. It was the UW Board of Regents, like you're saying, giving a finance report from all the different schools. We protested during UWM's portion.
Yeah, and then you guys went in, did the protest, talking about like the support for genocide. And then you guys were let out by cops. I'm going to let you take that story because it's a crazy one, and you were there.
Sure. So, we during the finance portion of the meeting, we stood up, and then one of our members began reading out a paragraph about basically how we are funding genocide. A lot of it is on YouTube. And then they immediately came up. So as soon as we started talking, two people flanked us and were like, please stop, please leave. You guys are breaking state law or whatever. And then they said there's a designated protest area, which is the funniest concept to me. The idea of like like they've set aside a safe space for the protests completely defeats the point of a protest. But they came up to us, said, you guys aren't in this area. You guys are disrupting the meeting. If you don't stop, you'll be arrested. And basically, as soon as they said that, about 10 cops came and flanked us from both sides. I believe the Marquette Police Department was there, UWM Police Department was there, and Madison Police Department was there. There were about 12 of us protesters, and they escorted us into a different area so that we were being booked. And there was a lot of confusion. Like, no one was really sure what happened, and even right now, no one's really sure what happened, because what the people who were arrested were told. I was included in that, but I was not booked because for some reason they told me and two other people to go around to the front to wait for our friends. I don't know what they were thinking, but we just got off without any warning or anything. But the people who were booked were told that they will be given a warning and then a letter banning them from the union for a month, and if they came back, they would be cited. But the Journal Sentinel reported that they would actually be cited, period, and that they were both arrested and given citations, and this was according to a UW spokesperson. So I think it was very not well done. They had no idea what they were doing or what the punishments would be.
Yeah, that's kind of a very unprofessional and just out of nowhere thing for them to do. I mean, you were telling me mixed messaging. It was just like, oh, we're going to arrest you. Oh, we're going to do this. And it just seemed like they themselves were just kind of like running off the seat of their pants. And so and the thing is that they knew we were coming. They were prepared. That's why they had 3 different police departments there. I think they expected more of us because a lot of people could not make it. When I walked in, I saw at least 10 cops on my way into the event, and they had like 20 to 30 police officers for the 12 of us. So they were prepared. They had the letters printed out already, but somehow they didn't recognize, or they didn't have a conversation about what they were going to do to punish us moving forward. Yeah, that's not very sporting, 20 to 30 to 12. I mean, at least drop it down to 12 so we got some fair numbers. Jeez. But yeah, you guys were not told like what's going to happen, what you're going to get, all that. And then, I mean, you were there. One of our friends and part of YDSA, Tavo, was there. They all got grabbed. I mean,
there were 7 arrests. I think 3 of those were YDSA people.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a crazy action, and they knew we were going to be there. I mean, with the encampment going on, what we had going on, I'm sure they expected us, but to that extent really just shows how hard the the UW system in general wants to crack down on this stuff, doesn't want any more movement, and essentially it's just a sign of bad faith. They're like, they don't want any more movement. Milwaukee gave us what we got, and they're like, nope, that's all you get.
Well, not to mention, they did our agreement, right? And then right after commencement ended, I think like the big leverage that the encampment gave us in negotiations was that they were worried about it happening during commencement. They were worried about us messing up commencement in some way. They did not want that to happen. So as soon as we took down the encampment, commencement happens, and then I think it was the next day or 2 days later, Mark Monet puts out a statement completely like backing down on everything, completely capitulating to the Zionists, to all the pressure. So they 100% were never working in good faith. They just wanted the leverage gone and for us to shut up as quickly as possible.
Yeah, he would like release a statement. It's like, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. We should have done all this first. Sorry about that. You know, wah, wah, wah. And it's like, because like, and we talked about this before. Like after the encampment, immediately it was immediate like pressure from Zionist groups and the UW system itself.
Yeah, the Zionists freaked out. I think we've talked about this before. We're not happy. But the thing is that when Zionist counter-protesters came to our encampment, there was maybe 12 of them versus the 30 Jewish students with like Jewish Voices for Peace and other Jewish organizations on our side. But the way that they frame it in the emails that they send out was that the Jewish voices on campus are telling them one thing specifically, and that all Jewish students are scared of this encampment and that we're super anti-Semitic. They're playing into the narrative more.
Yeah, it's all in support of like a genocidal regime that commits horrors on the daily. And speaking,
like what kind of horrors, Eli?
Oh, I wonder what I was segueing to. So recently, a day after, so essentially, the Israeli forces bombed a UN school complex in central Gaza that had become a shelter for many displaced Palestinians.
This is according to the New York Times.
According to the New York Times, Israel said it struck 3 classrooms used by 20 to 30 Palestinian militants.
They mean kindergartners.
Yeah, exactly. School kids, including some who participated in October 7th Hamas-led attack on Israel. Man, those are some militant kindergartners. And that it was unaware of civilian casualties. The Gazan Health Authority said that among this dozens of people killed, many were children and women.
Yeah, 46 killed in total, and 18 of them are children, 9 of them are women.
Yeah, some real Hamas fighters right there. I mean, you're telling me you couldn't figure that out in a school, no less? And about 3/4 of Gaza's roughly 2.2 million people have fled their homes, many of them multiple times, into these safe zones, like into these UN safe zones. That's the crazy thing. If you're going to strike anything, you're targeting places where people are fleeing. You're going to have civilian casualties. I mean, if a 21-year-old can say this, I think a government body can figure it out.
Oh, they wouldn't even acknowledge it. They didn't acknowledge that the military said, we are not aware of any civilian casualties. It's like, okay, what do you mean by that? Have you just, every time you see a news report, you're like, nah, we're just not going to read that?
Yeah, like 46 dead. And by the way, the Israeli military on Friday released the names of 8 Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad fighters that it said were killed in the strike, added to a list released on Thursday, bringing the total number to 17. Now, that's 46 dead and supposedly 17 were militants?
No, 46 dead and 8 were militants. 17 total militants throughout this entire war. Now, I think a lot of people who are listening might have heard other numbers, and that's because what Israel will do is any male between the ages of 18 and I think like 40 or something is considered like of age to fight and is therefore considered part of like Hamas or whatever. So that's where you hear these numbers like ratios that are great where they're killing a ton of Hamas militants to every civilian. It's just not true. They've killed 17 Hamas fighters. I mean, maybe more throughout, but like yeah, like this specific event, it was 17. So like they've killed almost no Hamas militants, quote unquote, and they've also created a generation more.
Yeah, no, Tommy, I'm not very good at math. That's why I'm on radio. But I don't think that's a really good ratio to be going with. I don't think that's a very solid. It seems like a lot of civilians dead for what's going on.
I don't know. I'm a poli-sci major.
Yeah, hey. But yeah, the bombing in oh gosh, I'm bad at Nusrat.
I'm not going to try it.
All right. Well, I'll try. Nusrat exemplifies the awful calculus of the 8-month-old war. Operating within densely packed neighborhoods, Hamas is accused of cynically using Palestinians and civilian infrastructure as shields. In taking aim at Hamas, Israel regularly kills civilians and is accused, even by its allies, of using excessive, indiscriminate force.